Okay, so I'll just share the screen so you can see the screen.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So I think we are good with these things theoretically. So I'll just start on the application. So how do we proceed with the basic configuration? That is the prerequisites that we have.
Yeah.
Okay. So so I'll just start with basic. So here, if you see, so this is the financial reporting structure. So where we'll create basically the COA related configurations, that is value set, values, and structure and the structure instance. Okay. So here the first thing that we'll create is that value set. Okay. So I'll just say create new, and so for this particular demonstration, I'll use these four, that is company, department, GL account, and intercompany. Okay, so I'll just say this is BP underscore company, and so here we can select the module, because if you see there will be by process, but if we set at module level, so it will be applied to the chart of account. Okay. So this is what I was referring to, the validation basically. So here if you see, so the format only meaning the free text and the dependent, independent and table. So subset is basically used where we have certain reports wherein I will have to call this particular value set when I'm creating this value set. Okay. So this will not be used in CUI, so I'm just leaving this option and I'll use independent value set. So this determines basically the length. So length meaning, so there are two things here. So if you see here, so we have, I think, yeah, so somewhere here we created this. So that is 10. So this is nothing but the code, and this is nothing but the description. Okay. So the length that we are referring here is this code. So this description can be even more than 40 or 50 characters, but this length should be defined here. So I'll just say it is 2, because not more than 99 companies a company will have. So we are having this as 2. So I'll just set the limit as 2. Okay, so the same process I'll just add for the rest of the segments as well. So second thing is department. So for department, and again I'm using 2, because even here not more than 99 that will have as an department values. Okay, so I'm just using the same thing. So only for the account, probably we might want to extend the character limit. So for national account, I'll say this is probably, let's say, 6. Yeah, so the finally, so I have this intercompany. Okay, so for this intercompany, I'm not defining a new value set, because what I'm going to do is that I'll use the company value set, because here if you see, so I have in this case 10, 20, and 30. So this is the same value that I'm going to define here for the intercompany value set. So I'm not defining a separate one for this. I'll be using the company value set. Okay. So in this list, so the first thing that we have defined it, that is the value set. Okay. So then the second item that we have is that defining the structure wherein we'll have to give the segments. So for this, I'll have to click this option called manage chart of account structure. So as I said, we'll have to define the structure and the structure instance. So first I'll define the structure. Okay, so I'm just giving the name as okay, so I have just given the name for chart of account structure and I'll just say save. So the moment you give save option, so we'll have option to add the segments. Okay, so I'll just use the same combination that we used. So I'm saying this is company. Okay, so now here if you notice, so you have this API name, so wherein this API name is used to integrate between the application. So let's say I'm getting this account code combination from some other let's say third party application. So what I can do is that, so I can basically get the information based on this API name and get those values. So this is basically for the synchronization that we are doing this activity. Okay. Yeah. So let me just give this. And then here, if you see, so we have something called prompt. So now when we so we saw something called a future segment. So yeah, so here if you see, so we have this feature 1 and feature 2. Okay. So now if I want to change this segment code or the segment description, I'll not be able to change it because this, if you see, so this will be frozen once we save this particular data. But what we can change is that this prompt and the short prompt name that we can change. Okay. So for instance, let's say I have given here as future 1 and here I want to change this as location, I can change. Now what will be shown in the application when I do a particular transaction, it's the prompt that will be shown there, not the segment code or the segment name. So segment code or segment name is basically the configuration specific. Okay. Yeah. So for this, I don't need to change it. So I'm just giving the same name here. Okay. And here, if you see, so this display width is nothing but the length that I can show. So for instance, I'll just refer this. So here if you see, so let's say this I have it as an, let's say 15, more than 15 characters. So now if I want to show 10 characters, so which means that I'll be able to show till this one, that is receipt ACC. So till this point, maybe I can show this, but it depends on the business how we wanted to show this display length and all those information. Okay. So basically for all these things, we will get it confirmed with the customer because in terms of finalization, so there are certain things that we will have to finalize with the customer. So before we proceed with the later part of configurations, so the first thing is that the COA structure and the length and how do we want to handle this value set and the values definitions basically. So once these things are done, so then we will have to set the configuration in the system. So after that, we can do the remaining configurations in the system. So that is our supply chain specific setups. Okay. So for now, I'll just say this is 20, and this column name is nothing but it's something of an what do you call the backend level data storage point. So wherein if I want to create certain values, so whether I'll store those values in segment 1 or segment 2. So in this case, I'm just using this sequence to map this in my tables. So for 1, I'm saying this is company. So I'll say it is segment 1.
Value set code.
So I'll just say this is company. Okay, so here if you see on the left hand side, so you'll find certain labels. So this label is nothing but so there are certain validations that is written for few labels, but there are other few labels wherein we don't have certain validations. For instance, if you take this primary balancing segment value, which we are finding it here, so if I apply this particular label, which means my debit and credit should be equal. So this applies to all the balancing segment. That is my primary balancing segment and secondary balancing segment and third balancing segment. Okay. So now, based on this selection that I'm doing, when I try to create a value, so I'll show after this, I'll show how to create a value. So wherein if I select this as a natural account, so I'll be asked to input the account type and then the posting, budgeting, all those options. Okay. So now here for this, so as I said, it's not mandatory that I wanted to have the company as my primary balancing segment. So if at all I wanted to have the, let's say, project, so I don't want to balance my debit and credit at company level. I wanted to balance at probably at the project level. So now for this scenario, so I can just say that this is my secondary balancing segment and my project would be primary balancing segment. Okay. So in this case, I'm just selecting primary balancing segment. So I'll show when we are creating the values, so how this has been defined.
Okay. So the sequence number, what does it like indicates? One, two, three. I mean, what is the
So now
purpose?
Yeah, so now here if you see, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm entering this transaction. Okay, so now here if you see, so this 10
Right.
is my company value and 00 is my cost center value. So
Mm-hmm.
whatever the sequence that I'm mentioning it here, so that will be applied when I create my transaction. So for instance, let's say I'm having my natural account in 2 and cost center in 3. So in that case, so I will have to input something like this. So that is 4578900, and then I'll have to input for intercompany and project.
Okay.
So based on this sequence, I'll have to input in my transaction.
Okay. And the segment level, what we have, this means that we are associating the COA to the primary balance segment, or is that the way to understand? Or
So this qualifier will be applied to this particular segment.
oh, okay.
So value set is associated here. So it's kind of a linkage that we will bring in. So
Hmm.
now this cannot be applied directly to the value set. So it has to be applied to the segment. So
Segment.
now how I will add the values is to the value set. So this is how we are building this bridge in order to bring this qualifier. So based on this qualifier, when I add my values to this particular segment, so it will tell me that these are the mandatory values, wherein I can just say this is allowed to post and allowed to use for budgeting. But as I said, if I'm going to use this segment as my natural account segment, so in
Mm-hmm.
that case, I'll have additional qualifiers saying that account type and the financial category, all those additional qualifiers basically. So this
Okay.
is defined here at that level when we attach it to a particular segment.
Okay.
But this cannot be associated with this one value set. So now let's say I have created this as BP company, but then the value set that I associated is BP, let's say cost center.
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, this since I have attached this to this particular segment, so this value which I'm going to add for this value set, so this will have this traits.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so that is how basically this will work. Okay, so this is two things that I have explained. So and apart from that, if you just go up a little bit, so you have this cost center, and then we have intercompany segment. So these qualifiers will have certain validations in the system that is created by Oracle, but the others, if you see, the fund segment and the future segment, so these segments does not have any value addition to the system, so it is just the same thing that will be creating. So it is just similar to leaving this particular label as null.
Okay.
Okay, so if you want to add a new label you can create it, but that will not have any validations basically.
Okay.
Okay, so okay, so similarly let me add for the remaining segments as well. So this is for department. So sequence would be 2, and here again the width would be 2, sorry 20, and this would be segment 2, and the value set code would be pp underscore department. So this is the one. So for this it would be cost center. Okay, and then natural account. Okay, so this would be on sequence number 3, and width would be 20. So this would be segment 3. Okay, so for this the qualifier would be natural account. So finally the intercompany. Okay, so as I said, so for the, sorry, it was BP intercompany.
These are the like standard naming conventions which typically being followed, like company underscore intercompany and company name underscore.
Yeah, usually so this we will propose this way, but
Okay.
it depends on the customer how they want to look at the data. So mostly it has been agreed, so rarely they will ask for their own convention. So in that case,
Okay.
probably as record, we might have to change this naming conventions.
Okay.
Okay, so as I said, so I'm not creating a new one, so I'm just using the same value set here for the intercompany segment. Okay, and I will associate this with the intercompany segment label. Yeah. So
These
now,
labels are standard ones, is it? Like
yeah,
what?
standard.
Okay. There is
Yes,
no custom label that can be created.
yeah, yeah. No, no, no new. I mean, there are options, but it will not give any impact in terms of changes to the values, parameters that we are adding. So let's say I am having only allow posting and allow budgeting. So if I'm going
Mm.
to create new one also, so
Mhm.
still I'll be seeing the same thing. So I'll not have any new addition to that. So
Okay.
yeah, so it's good to use the standard one.
Okay.
Okay. So the custom labels can be created here, as I said, but we don't have any impact here. But if at all you want to create a new label, so you can just add here and just give the label name. But if you see here, so you will not have any option to add any validations in the system. It's just a name that we are adding there. Okay. Yeah, so we have created the structure, and the second thing that we'll have to do is that structure instance. So I'll just say create. So here I'll just say COA instance. Okay. Okay. So here if you see, so we have an option called dynamic combination creation allowed. So which means, so I'll just explain this. So now I have a company value 10. Okay, so now I'm adding a new value called 11. So this is my new value. But then here, if you see, so I have multiple combinations. So for instance, my cost center would be, I'll be having 10, I'll be having 11, I'll be having 12. So similarly, I'll have for the other segments as well. So now if I add this 11, so I need this combination to be created first, and then this 11 and 10, and then this 11 and 12. So there are multiple combinations that I will have to create. So which I cannot create it manually. So for that, what we are doing is that, so we are saying dynamic combination creation allowed. So which means system will create this combination automatically for us. So we don't need to create it in the system. So we have this account combination screen wherein we can see the combination created. But there will be an option that is basically the Excel sheet. So wherein we can load it. But even though it is an Excel sheet, so since this is an additional effort, so usually will not recommend this option to create it manually. So we will suggest to enable this feature called dynamic combination creation allowed. Okay. And then short analyze is something that it's kind of an what do you call keyword. So using that keyword, if you want to probably derive this combination. So let's say I don't want to give this particular combination, that is 10.00 dot this thing. So instead I wanted to give a keyword called receiving accrual for, let's say, company A, company 1. So this is the keyword that I want to use. So now if I select this keyword, automatically this combination will be derived by the system. So that's the option of short analyze enabled. Okay, so for now I'm not enabling the short analyze. Okay, so the moment I select the structure, so I'll have the respective segments that we created there. By default, if you see, so we'll not have the status as required. So I'll have to say edit, and I'll have to say required. Okay. So now here, if you see, so yeah, before that I have something called constant value. Okay, so when do I go for constant value is that, so let's say I wanted to create this combination as a default one, so probably I will edit it. So in this sheet, if you see, so I don't want to enter every time this cost center as 00. So what I can do is that, so I can select this as a constant, and if I say constant, so I can enter the default value here. So I can simply say 00. Okay. So for company, we will not keep the constant value. So for cost center or the department segment, so we will enable this 00, that is constant value, and we'll see how that is appearing there in the transaction screen. Okay. And this is query, so this is kind of an technical side of it. So if I wanted to basically use this at query level, I can do it, but for now I'll just say optional. Then we have something called tree name. So this is nothing but the hierarchy. So what exactly is hierarchy is that, so this hierarchy can be used for any segment. So in this, if you see, so we have created this 4 segments. So usually this hierarchy is used for natural account for the purpose of what you call the financial statements. So let's say I'm looking at my liability account. Okay. So on top, so this would be my parent one, or let's say this would be my grandparent. Okay. And under this, if you see, so I will have accounts payable. Okay, so this would be my parent, and the child would be my payable supplier, and another child would be payable employee. Okay, and probably the another child would be payable, let's say others, other payables. Okay, so now this is how basically we will build it. So this we are calling it as tree structure. So now these things, what we call it as nodes. Okay, so which means, I mean, in finance terms, we call this as nodes. So now this is my grandparent and this is my parent, and these are my child values. So based on this, we will have to design our chart of account value. So for instance, the national account, that is for GL account, the length that we gave is 6. Okay. So the way that we can propose or suggest is that, so probably for the grandparent, I will not have more than 5 or 6. So on a worst case, probably I can go till 9. Okay. So not more than that. So for this, I can allocate one value. So that is 1. Okay, and then I have my parent. So for parent, probably I can have 2. Okay, so which means here this starts with 01. So probably if I'm adding another one, that is under this grandparent, if I'm adding second parent similar to my child value, so I will say that would be 02. So this would be 01 and that would be 02, which means this parent under this grandparent might have 99 parents. Okay, so not more than 99 parents that will be having it. Okay, so then next we have the child values. So child values, there are certain cases we might have probably what do you call the two length would be 2, but there are certain cases we might need length of 3. So I would say this is 0001. So now if I see something ending with 0, that means my parent value. So first let me put this. So here I would say this accounts payable supplier, the payable supplier account would be 101,001. So this would be my accounts payable for supplier. Okay. So now if I'm looking at my parent value, so in this case, So this would be my parent. So how I will have is that, so I'll have this as 01, and here I'll see this as 000. Okay, so this would be my accounts payable. So similarly, if I want to create it for my grandparent, so here it is 100,000. Okay, so this is my liability. So this is how we will build our what do you call, the parent and child combination. So this is what we are referring to the tree structure. Okay. Yeah. So once that is created, so we can attach that tree name here, but it is not mandatory to attach it here. As you can see, this is optional only. Okay. So I'll just say okay. But that is not limited to the natural account. So if I want to add it to a company, so wherein I wanted to see the head office and the regional office, so that can be also button. But if there is a need, you can go for the tree structure for that particular value set also. Okay.
Okay.
So, so I'll just enable this required option for all the segments, and then we will have to deploy this particular instance in order to use it at the primary ledger. Okay. So we have completed the chart of account instance as well. So now if you see the status here, so this is edited. So when this is an edited status, so we'll not be able to use this particular chart of account structure which we created. So we should make sure that this is in deployed status, which means you will have a green tick mark here. So for that I'll have to deploy flex field. But this deploy flex field will work for all the segments, I mean, for all the COA values that we have created in the system. So now let's say I have created 10 chart of account structure. So out of which, so I have one chart of account structure which has issue, which means I have created only one segment. But as we saw, so it should have at least two segments in it. So if I try to deploy this, so even my chart of accounts will be in error status saying you should clear that particular chart of account in order to complete this activity. So unless I clear those errors also, so I'll not be able to use this newly created chart of accounts in my primary ledger. Okay, because this works as in global, wherein this is one screen to monitor all my chart of accounts. So since this is in test environment, we might face this issue, but in real time, in production or your development, so basically you'll not have that challenge in terms of having issue with your chart of accounts. So even though if you have implementing for 3 or 4 countries and you have more than 2 or 3 chart of accounts, so even that case, but this chart of accounts, usually you will have as one chart of accounts. So usually business will not go for more than two chart of accounts. So it's
Okay.
limited to two. But if at all there is a need, we can create anyway. But as I have seen it, so usually it is one chart of account that will be used across the countries. Okay. So if we have any number in this error or warning, so we'll have to just expand this and look at the error. What is the error that is stopping us? So I believe it should not have any error. So if this has processed, so we'll be seeing the status as deployed with the symbol in green. So this is, yeah, recorded. Okay.
So do we need to know any of the table names for this COI or it's not required?
No, this is not required. So table names for COA, it is not needed. The table name is FND underscore segment underscore values. So that is the table name that we'll be using. But this you will not need it because mostly the transaction is what we will look at in terms of journals and these things. But for this, since this is only the master data, so we will not need to know the table names in this case basically.
Okay. So whenever we create the custom feeds like this, we have to deploy those flex feed.
Uh, Custom fields in the sense you are saying the chart of account.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct, correct. So when we create new chart of account structure, so we'll have to deploy because automatically the status will change to edited.
Okay.
So now if you see the status will change to deployed. So if there is any error, you can see the error here in the deployment error message. Okay. Yeah, so this part is done. That is, so here if you see, so this chart of account structure is created. And as I said, currency, we will have it by default. So we'll use the same one. And the accounting method also, we will be having it. Okay, so then we are having this calendar. So we'll see how to create this calendar. Okay, so this is the navigation. So if you see, manage accounting calendar. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'll just say add and I'll say, let's say BP fiscal calendar. Okay, and then the period would probably start from April 1st, 2023. So now when we define this period, so we should make sure that we have considered the data migration activities also, because if we define the period as, let's say, 1st of April 2023, so if I'm importing only the open transactions, that should be fine, for which I can say from 1st of April so till 31st March TB I can load it. So after loading the TB, I can probably load the open purchase orders as well. But let's say if I'm going for 3 years data, so we will propose the open transaction, but if at all there is a request to load the historical data as well, so in that case with this option we'll not be able to do it. And also once we have created and attached this particular calendar with primary ledger, so we will not be able to change this data at my primary ledger. So in that case I will have to close the primary ledger that I have created, and I'll have to go for the fresh configurations for my primary ledger. Okay, so we'll have to consider this, and we should make sure that customer has agreed to this open transaction. That is our migration strategy. So that is the reason if you see most of the business will work in a way that when we give the solution design, we will also talk about the data migration strategy, how we wanted to take it further. So basically, based on that, we can do the configurations in the system. So that's the purpose of discussing the data migration strategy at the solutioning phase itself.
Okay. So if in case they wanted historical data, that means the start date has to be backdated ones like 21,
Yeah, correct.
20.
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
Okay.
correct. In that case, I'll have to say if it is 1 year data, I'll say this is 2022. And if
Okay.
it is 3 years, then I'll have to go for 2020.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm. And while doing the requirements itself, we need to know their organization fiscal calendar, like what they want us
Correct.
to configure. Like,
Yeah,
okay.
correct. Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, and then the period frequency. So period frequency, it will be usually the monthly for the accounting calendar, but as an option we have also for the quarterly, weekly, yearly, but it's, I mean, no implementation I have seen used the other period frequency. It's usually the monthly calendar that is being followed.
What does it mean, like when you say monthly calendar?
It is Jan, Feb, and March.
Yeah,
Hmm.
but in terms of configuration or like in terms of displaying data, where is it relating this period frequency?
So now this period frequency meaning when I say monthly, so which means if I talk about one period, so this would be my 1st of April to 30th of April. So
Yeah.
now if I say my period frequency as quarterly, which means I cannot say this is from 1st of April to 30th of April. So in this case, I'll have to go with 1st of April to 30th of June. Okay, so this would be my one period. Or if I'm saying weekly, which means I'll have to define more number of periods. So in this case, again, I cannot select 1st of April to 30th of April. So I'll have to say 1st of April to 7th of April. And then I'll have to define multiple periods. Basically, system has this
Okay.
validation. If I'm selecting here different parameter, so it
Mhm.
will restrict me to select beyond this. If I'm selecting weekly, let's say, so if I'm saying 1st of April to 30th of April, system will not allow me to complete that particular setup. So
Oh,
that validation is there in the system. So
okay.
accordingly, we will have to select.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. So this is separator. So separator is nothing but your period, this thing basically. So if you're saying April 2022, so probably if I'm using this, I'll see this something like this. Okay, so that's the separator.
Okay.
And then the format. So format, whether we wanted to have this as period y, I mean triple one and yy, or whatever the format that we wanted to use, so we can use here. Okay, so I'll just go with the standard format, that is period and year. Okay, and this is for budget. So if I don't want to use this for my GL calendar, I wanted to use only for the budgetary control, so I can enable this option. But this calendar that I'm creating is for the purpose of the GL setup, so I'm disabling this particular option. Okay, and then I will have something called an adjusting period frequency. So adjusting period frequency, again, I have multiple options. So I can say once, or I can say twice, or I can say mid-year and then once at year end. So there are multiple options. So now what exactly is adjusting period is that? So this is the period which will be used to post my adjusting entries, which means that on an yearly basis, so basically I will have a need to do the auditing and then reconcile and then submit my books to the board. Okay, so now this date can be used to pass the adjustment entries. The reason why we will part this adjusting entries here is that just to identify if I have created the adjustment entries in the system, so I will know that if I want to, let's say, take the adjustment entries created in the system for the year 2023, so I don't need to go for a particular filtration wherein I can search for the journal entries and then from there I'll have to filter it. So instead, if I use this particular period, so what I can do is that simply I can run it for this period, so which will give me the adjustment entries created in the system. Okay, so that's the purpose one thing. And here, as I said, I can use multiple. It's not limited to one at year end, which means so since I have given this as one at year end, so which means my period would be 13. So that is 12 months and one adjusting period. So if I'm giving it as, let's say, two, that is one at beginning and one at end, so which means that my period count would be 14. Okay, so accordingly the count will change. So that's about it. So I'll just say next. So now if you see, so here I have option to select if this is adjusting period. But so by default system will select this particular period, that is last period, as my adjusting period. So if you see here, so this is 13. and the date you can see, so this is 31st of March. So if I run the journals for this particular period, so I will get the transaction created in this. So this is
Okay.
only one date that I'm looking at. So if you see here, so the same date I will have here also, but since I'm creating this as a separate period, so I can use this particular period to post my adjusting entries. Okay,
Yeah.
so I can just say save. So this dates will be created by the system automatically, so we don't need to do anything manually in the system. So probably let's say I have created this, I wanted to open for next year. So simply I can say add a year, which is going to add for the next year as well. Okay. So that's about the calendar creation. So we have created the calendar as well. So, okay. So now we will create this legal entity. Okay. So if there is a team called HCM, so probably we'll ask them, or there are some cases where we will create the legal entity. Okay. So I will create one legal entity for the purpose of attaching it with the primary ledger. Okay.
Okay. Can you show me the currency and accounting method, like where it is? Is it in the managed currencies?
Yeah, so yes, manage currencies. Okay, so I'll just select INR.
Already it is there? Okay,
Yeah,
fine.
it will be there. So
And
currencies, we will not need to define it. So by
okay,
default, Oracle will give us. So probably in some
okay,
case it might be disabled. So we will just have to enable it.
okay. And accounting method also similarly, it is already
Yeah, it
created
is
or
already there. So already there. So I'll just show when we create this ledger.
ledger? Okay,
Because if you see, so this accounting method is common one that we are creating. So I can create in any of the subledger modules. So
oh,
even in the
okay,
procurement, I can create that. Okay, so
okay.
I'll just show when we are creating the primary ledger.
Yeah,
Okay, so the next thing is the legal entity. Okay.
yeah.
So now for the legal entity, so since this is about the registration of my business, so I will have a location for this, okay, and I will have my registration details. So which is my GST number in this case. Okay, so firstly, I'll just try to create one legal address. So I'll have to change the country to India. So accordingly, the address style will change because for US there is different address style and for India the address style is different. So I'll just give a dummy address. Probably let me call this as Chennai, and this is 6 lakh 40, and the state is Tamil Nadu. Okay. So probably I'll just use this to my legal entity creation. Okay, so here, so since I don't have the existing setup, I'll have to say create new and click apply and go to task. So here I can just create a new one. So first thing I'll have to do is that change the country. So the country that we are doing is for India. Okay, so I'll just call this as okay. So the legal entry, legal address that we created. So I'll just say it is Chennai. Yeah, that is the one that we created. That is address one. Okay, so I'll just select this, and so these are just optional. So in case if I want to give the place of registration, so I can just give and this is the actual information that will be giving. Okay, so just say 9023E and one is it. Okay, so this would be my so registration number. So this is the number that I have given. So now if you see here, so I have an option to select this as an payroll statutory unit and the legal employee. So both are basically the payroll component. So now when will I use this is that, so if I want to use this as my payroll entity. So let's say I have registered my head office as the legal address, and where I have put my HR department is in the same building. So I will enable this option. So probably if I have the payroll entity in different, so if you see companies like Accenture, so they will have separate location where they will have their HR team, and they will have separate team for implementation support and all those other technologies as well. So similarly, if you have a requirement wherein your payroll entity is different, so you can create separate address and you can associate with your payroll entity. But if this will be treated as your payroll entity as well, so you can just say this is payroll unit and this is my legal employer. Okay. So now the legal entity is also created. So the next step is to create the ledger. Okay. So to create ledger, I'll have to click this option general ledger. So here I'll find option called manage primary ledger. Okay. So if I click this, so I'll have to create a new entry. So let me give the name as BuddyPower primary ledger. Okay, and the one that we created is COA instance. So as I said, so we'll not be able to attach the structure. It is the instance that we will attach to the this thing. And yeah, this is the one that we created, that is BP fiscal calendar. Okay, and our currency is INR. And accounting method, if you see, so these are the standard accounting methods, those are given by Oracle. Okay, so when we see the procurement, so I'll show where we are seeing this standard accrual, and also there are sub components to this, so wherein we have this accounting method, and then we have this journal sets and the transaction account builder. So all those things are there, so I'll explain there each one of it. So why do we use that and where we can use those? Also, we have this mapping set and the other things. So that we will see when we are seeing the procurement related configurations. Okay. So for now, I'll just select the accrual. So you have it specifically for China and the US. Other than that, you will have the standard accrual and standard accrual with encumbrance. So if we are using the budget and encumbrance, so we can enable this option called standard accrual with encumbrance. But for now, we are not enabling the budget feature. So I'm just selecting this as standard accrual. Okay. So I'll just say save and close. So now the first step of creating the primary ledger is created. So I'll say specify ledger options. Okay. So since I have already created the primary ledger, so I'll have to select the scope in order to specify the options. So it is body. Okay. So this is the one that we created. Okay. So here if you see, so this would be our first open period. So that is April 2023. And now here if you see, so we have something called future enterable period. So now what exactly is future enterable period is, if I want to basically create one period for the purpose of creating the journal entry, that I can create it using this. So now this will be used if I probably want to post a chunk of journal entries in the next month. So I don't want to wait till next month. So I will create the journal entries and keep it ready. And once the period is opened, so I'll just go ahead and post it, which means if the period status is in future enterable, I can enter the journal entries, but I will not be able to post the entries. So now, what is the difference between entering and posting is that? So I can enter the transaction. So that will be saved in your tables. So let's say I wanted to look at my JE journal headers. So there I'll see this data created. But if I look at my GL balances table, so where the total balances for this particular account can be seen. So there I'll not see the data because this particular journal is not posted yet. Okay. So that's what about this particular feature called future interval period. Okay. So others are like whatever we have given already. So as you can see, this calendar cannot be changed and this period also cannot be changed. So since the calendar cannot be changed, of course you cannot change the period also because the first period is April 2023. So probably if you don't want to give April 2023, but you want to use from June, so that you can do, but before April you cannot do. Okay. And then the language. So language, you have these options. Okay, standard ones. So I'll just go with English. Yeah, so this is the one. Okay, and then you have something called retain earnings. So now, so the other accounts, if you see, so these are okay. I think I did not add values for this. So let me quickly add values for this first.
You mean after creating the value sets, we did not create the values?
Yeah, correct. We created value sets and we started with the other setups, that is chart of account structure and the instance, and then directly we went to legal entity and the other setups, but we did not add the values. So this value needs to be added. So let me just go back to this screen, this financial reporting structures. So the one that we created is BP. Okay, so these are the ones that we created. So for this, so I'll have to click this option called manage values. And here if you search, so we'll not find anything. So we'll have to create a new one. So the length that we gave is 10. Okay. So I'll just give this name as pharma. And let's say 20 is retail. And let's say 30. So that is what yeah, construction. So now this value once we create it, so we'll not be able to change it. So if I don't want it, so probably I will have to disable and end date this particular value, but I will not be able to delete this particular value. Okay, so the moment I save this, so this field, that is value, will be frozen. So if I want to change the description, that I can do it, but this value cannot be changed. So the value here is nothing but the GL code. Okay, so code and description. So I cannot change the code, but I can change the description. Okay, so this is what I was referring to. So if you see here, so this is my balancing segment. Okay, so I will have only allow posting and allow budgeting. So other things that I will not have it here. So I'll show when I'm creating it for the natural account. Okay, so there I'll show what I have as an extra. So now we have something called summary. So summary meaning if I enable the summary flag as yes, so which means this is my parent account. So that is what I was referring here. So if we just come down, okay, so for this I will enable the summary flag And again for this I will enable the summary flag, but for this I will not enable the summary flag, which means my child value will be always starts with child value will always have this as no. Okay, so now the transaction can be entered only with the child values but not the parent values. So the balance will be rolled up to the parent basically based on the balance that I have it in my child values. Okay, so this is how it will work. So all these three are my child values, which means that these are the ones that I'm going to use for transaction. So I'll just say no for all and do a save and close. Okay, so similarly let me add few values for this one also. So let me call this as, let's say, IT, and let's say 20 as finance, and 30 as production. Okay, and 40 as design, and transfer department. Okay, so these are the departments that I have created. So if you notice here, so I'll have the same parameters here as well. But then if I go to my natural account, so I'll have the additional values. So this is basically, so based on the segment label that I have given there. Okay, so now it is as a practice. So what we will do is that, so if this is my let's say, so how we will have our financial statement is that, so it will say liability and equity, okay, on the one side, and I'll have my asset. Okay, so this is called balance sheet, and then I will have my revenue and expenditure. Okay, so these are the things that we will have. So now for liability, so we will say this starts with series 1, and for equity, so we'll say the series starts with 2, and for asset it is 3. Okay, and for revenue it is 4, and for expenses it would be 5. So probably the equity might change. So there are some companies they will ask equity first. So probably if you want to give equity with series 1 and a liability with series 2, that also you can do it. So this again it's a business call. So whether they wanted to have in this particular sequence. Okay. So I'll just create this in this order. So now, so this value should start with 2. Okay. So I'll just say 20 100 1, so which should be my retained earnings. So now what exactly is this retained earnings is nothing but, so company might have earned certain profit. So if it has earned this profit, so what it will do is that it will have the excess profit stored in this particular account. Okay, so this profit, what I'm talking about is after giving the shareholders profit or whatever the dividends that we wanted to give. So after that, whatever the amount that we have as a surplus profit, so those amount will be stored in this particular account called retained earnings. Okay. So there is a process that finance will run called create balance sheet and the profit and loss. So that will take care of this particular activity. Okay, but to understand, so this account is basically the surplus profit that is earned in a particular year is stored here, or you can say reserves. Okay, so that's about this account. Okay, so I'll just create okay, I think I did not give the account type. So this is ownership equity. So I'll just say this is ownership. So these three items we have seen it already, that is summary, posting and allow budgeting. But since I selected this as natural account label, so I'm seeing account type as owner's equity and also the third party control account. So third party control account is something that I wanted to have certain control. So for instance, retain earnings, I don't want to generate any manual journals. So I can select this option. Or let's say this is a liability account. So I don't want to have it created, and also I want some reference details, that is the supplier name or the supplier number or whatever the information that I wanted to capture from the specific module. So I wanted to get that information. So I'll say supplier control account, or from the receivables I want to get, so I'll get it. So if I say third party, which means I will get either from the customer or from the supplier. So when we say customer or supplier, it is not the supply chain related, it is basically from the accounts payable module or the accounts receivable module. Okay. So this reconciliation is nothing but the account level reconciliation that they will do it. Basically, this is used not for all the accounts. So this is used for the clearing accounts. So let's say I have so I'm creating this, what we call the receipt entry. So now here I will have my AP accrual account that will hit here. Okay, so when this AP account will be knocked off, when this particular receipt, that is receipt items, are being invoiced, so that is when this accrual will be knocked off. So now this is also a clearing account. So for which I can say reconcile. So this is going to reconcile, saying that for this particular clearing account, this particular amount is being knocked off and the balance that we have is zero, because we should not logically having balance for this clearing account, which means if I'm having balance, which means that I have not completed certain activity in the system, or I have some pending accounts to be knocked off at the year end to check it, I'm saying. Okay, so that's the option of having reconcile. And then the finance category. So here probably if I want to, so this again for the purpose of the financial reporting and these things. But if I want to probably use this particular option, so I can use it. So if you see here, so I'll have other equity related, so because this is nothing but retained earnings or the reserve. So this we call it as equity. Okay, so these are the options. So as I said, so these options are button because I have selected the label as natural account. Okay. Yeah, so we have created the values. So now I will have to go back to the screen. Let me close this.
This is actually a very big topic, general ledger and all.
Yeah, yeah,
So many things are there in that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. What our finance folks they'll be doing.
Yeah. Okay, so the same thing I'll just select here and
On the journal language, let's say that their consultants are located in different geographical location. If
okay.
one person wants to enter in French, another person in another country, they wanted to enter in English. Are there any such scenarios or?
No, usually we will not have it because in that
Okay.
case, so if I'm looking at my data, I'll have in different languages. So to standardize, so what would be the reporting language that I will use in terms of where this particular business owner is sitting? So if he's sitting in Middle East somewhere, so I'll say the journal language is Arabic. So I will see the
Oh,
information in Arabic. So it's basically where this particular person is reading this data. So based on that, we'll have to set this language. Okay.
values are populated.
Yeah. So I'll just give combination. Just say again the form.
We are the same company only.
Yeah, so I'm just creating this for pharma. So the same activity we can do it for the other two entities as well. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll just say okay. Okay, so here, so these are basically their year-end activities that they will do. So for balance sheet accounts, they will use, so this is nothing but if we have the foreign currency transactions, so for that, they will have this option. If it is the balance sheet accounts, it is the period and rate that they will use. If it is P&L, that is profit and loss account, so that is our revenue and expense account. So for that they will use period average rate type. Okay. Yeah, and these are certain controls in terms of tracking gain or loss and these things. Okay. So yeah, so so this is nothing but if I want to probably restrict if my GL period is in open, so I don't want to probably close the GL period unless my the other modules are closed. Okay, so for that I can just enable this option. So if I have, probably I can do this. Yeah, and then the translation is nothing but our this thing currency related translation, which they will convert. So meaning today, let's say I'm creating one transaction with the currency value of 80 rupees. Let's take USD. Okay. So now if I'm calculating at end of the period, so I'll calculate whether this is gain or loss, and also I'll have to report it. So for that, I'll have this translation account. So this cumulative translation adjustment account will be used if there is a difference in the amount. That is either it is gain or loss. So I'll have this created. Okay, and then the journal processing and these options. So these are related to the suspense account. So usually will not propose this suspense account, but we have option if at all I want to enable. So I'll have to give the account. Okay, so that's about it. And then approvals, if I want to enable for journals, I can enable here, and then I'll have to write the rules, the approval rules. I'll have to say if this condition matches, then approve it or route it through this approval route. So I can just say all those things using this. Okay. So that is the option, that is enable journal approval. Okay. And then these are the options, that is to notify if the prior period is used to enter the journal, and validation, and
Okay.
limit the journal to a single currency. So I can limit all these options. Okay. So this is nothing but the reconciliation that we saw, that is for the clearing account. Okay, so if I have enabled it for a few accounts, so probably I can enable this, so which will enable this feature. Okay. And then by date, if I want to import transaction, let's say I have created, I have costed 10 transactions. So now I wanted to create all 10 in one journal entry. So by date, I can import the journals. So which will create one entry for that. Okay, so that's about this option. And this is about the intercompany, which we saw, that is between my inventory R1 and inventory R2. If I'm transferring it and I want to generate this intercompany accounting, so I can enable it here.
Okay.
So after enabling it here, so I will have to do at my inventory module as well. So there are few setups, intra transfers related. So that I'll have to do. Okay.
Okay.
So these are basically the journal reversal criteria. So if I want to set, so for instance, the accrual entries. So there are few accrual entries that we will get it from the project module. So if I want to reverse it at the end of the period and I want to push it to the next period, so there will be certain activities that project management team will be doing it. So for that, I can define the criteria. So if this is on this particular category and the source, called project. So I want to reverse on particular date. So that I can set it, and I can attach that criteria set here at the ledger. Okay. And these are options related to that. Whether I want to auto reverse when that particular period is closed and reopened. So I can enable this. Okay. And this is nothing but the synchronization between the primary ledger and secondary ledger. So we saw the primary and secondary, right? So if I want to synchronize between those, so I can just have this enabled. So this is only for the purpose of reversal. Okay. Yeah, and this is again something related to the financial statement. So instead of taking the actual balance, probably if I want to take the average balance, I can enable this option. Okay. Yeah, and the sequence also. So this is related to basically the AP and AR module because they have something called document sequencing. Okay,
Okay.
so for the auditing purpose, so usually the firms will ask for the document sequencing, which will be unique
Mm-hmm.
across the this thing. So for which they will have to first enable and mention if it is handled at the ledger or the legal entity. So accordingly, they will have to do the setup at their payable and the receivable modules as well. Okay.
Okay.
So if they are doing it, so they can enable. So for now, I'm just saying no sequencing. But if you want to use it, so we'll have to first enable here and enable for payables and receivables. Okay, so for
Mm-hmm.
India scenario, basically they will have it because it mandates to have separate document sequencing for sales especially. So for receivables, they will need to create by particular business unit. Let's say we have four business unit. So for each one, we will have to create it as a separately. Okay, so for that, they will use this option. Okay, so this is about the ledger options. Okay, so
Okay.
once this is created, so then I'll have to associate the legal entity. Okay, so I'll just select this option, assign legal entity. So the one that we created is, okay, I think we gave BuddyPower Infotech. Okay, so I'll just say add. So I can add multiple legal entities as well. So now here the point to note is that so I can attach multiple legal entities to this ledger, but I cannot attach this legal entity to more than one ledger. So it should be always to one primary ledger that I'll be associating it. So once I have associated it, so I'll not be able to change this particular data. So again for this, I'll have to do again from the scratch. So these are basically the one-time setup that we'll be doing it. So once it is created, we will not be able to change this particular configurations. So we will have to end it this configuration and go for a fresh one. So that's why these setups we should make sure that we are doing it correctly so that we'll avoid the effort in terms of creating new. Okay, so I'll just say save and close. Okay, so we are done this ledger options. We have created ledger legal entity and then associated then ledger options. Yeah, so the next thing is that so if I want to probably uh, have it at the legal entity, I can do, or if I want to associate with ledger, I can do. So now what exactly is this balancing segment value is nothing but the company value. Okay, so if you remember, so we have attached this as primary balancing segment. Okay. Okay, so this is the one that we are going to attach here. So for now, I'll just say at legal entity because anyway we are having only one legal entity, so this is not going to impact us. So probably if we have more than one legal entity and I want to attach multiple, so I can do it. And there might be a scenario wherein I might have one legal entity, so under that I wanted to add multiple company values, so that is also possible. So, because there might be a possibility that I might add my branch as my company. So, let's say I have branch in T Nagar, I have branch in Nandanam, I have branch in Anna Nagar. So, I'll add these three as my branch and I'll say this is my balancing segment value. So,
Okay.
here for this particular legal entity, I will have I will have to attach all those values. Okay. So now in this case, I'm adding only the pharma, okay? But if I have a requirement, as I said, if I want to attach multiple, so what I'll do is that I'll just say add, and I'll add all those values.
So, what you're saying is that one legal entity can be present in only one ledger. The one legal entity cannot be associated to multiple ledgers.
Correct.
So there won't be any real business scenario where they wanted to
No,
associate.
because yeah, they will not have it, and also if they want to have, so will not be able to do it because the structure that is given by Oracle will not allow us to attach with multiple. So
Mm.
here, if you see, so I have attached it. So now if I create a second ledger and try to add that, so I'll not see any values there. I
Mhm.
mean, value in the sense body power, I'll not be able to see there because this legal entity can be attached only to this. And also, there will not be a scenario wherein this one legal entity will be associated with multiple ledger because ledger can be created on the basis of line of business or this can be created basically based on the reporting requirement or the transaction need. So
Mhm.
in any requirement, they might create this ledger, but let's assume that we are creating for the different line of business, different ledgers. Okay.
Okay.
So now for my line of business pharma, I will have this particular legal entity created. So
Okay.
now again, I will not attach this pharma to my retail ledger. So I will
Mm.
create different legal entity for my retail business. So I
Yeah.
will attach only that. So there will
Okay.
be no scenario that we will have uh, to attach this legal entity to the second ledger.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so that's about the balancing segment. So we have associated 1 0 with our this ledger that is pharma. Okay. Yeah, and then finally we will just complete this particular accounting configuration. So that is review and submit accounting configurations.
Configuration.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll just click this option. So now if you see here, so I don't have this balance cube generated. So now what exactly? So this is again a kind of an finance team which they will do it for their reporting
Mm.
need. But to understand what exactly is this balance cube is that uh, this is a S-based product basically. So if I want to generate my financial report of this particular ledger, so I can use this cube to generate the data. So there are options through Excel sheet through application if I want to get the data as an FRS report or something. So I can just do a drag and drop using this cube that system has generated. Okay. So this is completely the finance thing that they will do it. Okay, so average balance if we enable it, so we'll have just give me 1 minute.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so that's about this option. So I'll just say submit. So this will run, and this one schedule process. So this will trigger a schedule process. So let me just check if this process is completed. So if this process is completed, so which means that the ledger setup is ready. So the next thing that we will need is the business unit. So as we see, so this is the one that we'll have to create next. Okay, so let's wait for this program to complete. So meanwhile, let me just complete the business unit part. Okay, so for which, so I'll have to go to this thing, the setup and maintenance. So here, if you see, so I have this organization structure. Okay, so this is the option. So in terms of business unit, so there are three things that we'll do. So first thing is to create the business unit and to give the business functions and giving the assignment. Okay, so these are the three things that we will do. So first thing is to create the business unit. So I will just say add. Okay. Okay, so I'll just call this as, let's say, power BU. Okay, so the manager and locations are optional. So if at all I wanted to capture this information, I can capture. But because I'm nowhere, I'll be printing this particular location. Okay, so if at all there is a need to print the location of this particular business unit on my building, so it could be my sales order or it could be my purchase order. So because I will be issuing this purchase order to my vendor. So if I want to capture the location from where I raise this particular purchase order, so then I will have to input my location, because this is where I'm basically importing or linking in my table, saying that if this business unit is used to create the purchase order, so I wanted to populate the address bottom of this particular business unit. Okay, so the way that we will look at report is that on top I'll have the legal entity. Okay, so which we created just before some time. Okay, so below that I'll have the actual business unit. So from where I created this particular unit, and then I'll have address and then the remaining details like the item and other details. Okay,
Okay.
so now if I want to show this there, so I'll say This is the location that I wanted to show there. But here if you see it is optional. So later point in time also, if I want to add, I can just add here.
Are you there?